Welcome back. Let's start reading. Soon 1 p.m. I just follow my list. When I'm finished reading, I will cook some hot foods, pasta with soup, tomato soup, let's start read this. I need a minute to get to my bed. Not a minute, but half a minute.
Desert. Not to be confused with desert. This article is about dry terrain. For arid climate, see desert climate. For the act of abandoning or withdrawing support, see desertion. For other uses, see desert, disambiguation. A desert is a landscape where little precipitation occurs and, consequently, living conditions create unique biomes and ecosystems. The lack of vegetation exposes the unprotected surface of the ground to denudation. About 1/3 of the land surface of the Earth is arid or semi-arid. This includes much of the polar regions, where little precipitation occurs, and which are sometimes called polar deserts or cold deserts. Deserts can be classified by the amount of precipitation that falls, by the temperature that prevails, by the causes of desertification or by their geographical location. Deserts are formed by weathering processes as large variations in temperature between day and night put strains on the rocks, which consequently break in pieces. Although rain seldom occurs in deserts, there are occasional downpours that can result in flash floods. Rain falling on hot rocks can cause them to shatter, and the resulting fragments and rubble strewn over the desert floor are further eroded by the wind. This kicks up particles of sand and dust, which can remain airborne for extended periods, sometimes causing the formation of sandstorms or dust storms. Wind-blown sand grains striking any solid object in their path can abrade the surface. Rocks are smoothed down, and the wind sorts sand into uniform deposits. The grains end up as level sheets of sand or are piled high in billowing sand dunes. Other deserts are flat, stony plains where all the fine material has been blown away and the surface consists of a mosaic of smooth stones, often forming desert pavements, and little further erosion takes place. Other desert features include rock outcrops, exposed bedrock and clays once deposited by flowing water. Temporary lakes may form and salt pans may be left when waters evaporate. There may be underground sources of water, in the form of springs and seepages from aquifers. Where these are found, oases can occur. Plants and animals living in the desert need special adaptations to survive in the harsh environment. Plants tend to be tough and wiry with small or no leaves, water-resistant cuticles, and often spines to deter herbivory. Some annual plants germinate, bloom and die in the course of a few weeks after rainfall, while other long-lived plants survive for years and have deep root systems able to tap underground moisture. Animals need to keep cool and find enough food and water to survive. Many are nocturnal, and stay in the shade or underground during the heat of the day. They tend to be efficient at conserving water, extracting most of their needs from their food and concentrating their urine. Some animals remain in a state of dormancy for long periods, ready to become active again during the rare rainfall. They then reproduce rapidly while conditions are favorable before returning to dormancy. People have struggled to live in deserts and the surrounding semi-arid lands for millennia. Nomads have moved their flocks and herds to wherever grazing is available, and oases have provided opportunities for a more settled way of life. The cultivation of semi-arid regions encourages erosion of soil and is one of the causes of increased desertification. Desert farming is possible with the aid of irrigation, and the Imperial Valley in California provides an example of how previously barren land can be made productive by the import of water from an outside source. Many trade routes have been forged across deserts, especially across the Sahara, and traditionally were used by caravans of camels carrying salt, gold, ivory and other goods. Large numbers of slaves were also taken northwards across the Sahara. Some mineral extraction also takes place in deserts, and the uninterrupted sunlight gives potential for the capture of large quantities of solar energy. Etymology: English desert and its Romance cognates, including Italian and Portuguese deserto, French desert and Spanish desierto, all come from the ecclesiastical Latin certum, originally an abandoned place, a participle of psereria, to abandon. The correlation between aridity and sparse population is complex and dynamic, varying by culture, era, and technologies, thus the use of the word desert can cause confusion. In English before the 20th century, desert was often used in the sense of unpopulated area, without specific reference to aridity, but today the word is most often used in its climate science sense, an area of low precipitation. Phrases such as desert island and Great American Desert, or Shakespeare's Deserts of Bohemia, The Winter's Tale, in previous centuries did not necessarily imply sand or aridity. Their focus was the sparse population. Major deserts. See also, List of deserts by area. The world's largest non-polar deserts. Deserts occupy about 1/3 of Earth's land surface. Bottomlands may be salt-covered flats. Ulian processes are major factors in shaping desert landscapes. Polar deserts, also seen as cold deserts, have similar features, except the main form of precipitation is snow rather than rain. Antarctica is the world's largest cold desert, composed of about 98% thick continental ice sheet and 2% barren rock. Some of the barren rock is to be found in the so-called dry valleys of Antarctica that almost never get snow, which can have ice-encrusted saline lakes that suggest evaporation far greater than the rare snowfall due to the strong katabatic winds that even evaporate ice. The 10 largest deserts. Rank desert area, kilometer, area, SCMI. 1 Antarctic desert, Antarctica. 14,200,000 5,482,651. 2 Arctic desert, Arctic. 13,900,000 5,366,820. 3 Sahara desert, Africa. 9,200,000 3,552,140. 4 Great Australian, Australia, 2,700,000 1,042,476. 5 Arabian Desert, Middle East, 2,330,899,618. 6 Gobi Desert, Asia, 1,295,500,002. 7 Kalahari Desert, Africa, 900,000 347,492. 8 Patagonian Desert, South America, 673,259,847. 9 Syrian Desert, Middle East, 500,000 193,051. 10 Great Basin Desert, North America, 490,000 190,000. Deserts, both hot and cold. play a part in moderating Earth's temperature, because they reflect more of the incoming light and their albedo is higher than that of forests or the sea. Defining characteristics. A desert is a region of land that is very dry because it receives low amounts of precipitation, usually in the form of rain, but it may be snow, mist or fog, often has little coverage by plants, and in which streams dry up unless they are supplied by water from outside the area. Deserts generally receive less than 250 millimeters, 10 in, of precipitation each year. The potential evapotranspiration may be large but, in the absence of available water, the actual evapotranspiration may be close to zero. Semi-deserts are regions which receive between 250 and 500 millimeters, 10 and 20 in, and when clad in grass, these are known as steppes. Most deserts on Earth, such as the Sahara Desert, Grand Australian Desert and the Great Basin Desert, occur in low altitudes. Water. Atacama, the world's driest non-polar desert, part of the arid diagonal of South America. One of the driest places on Earth is the Atacama Desert. It is virtually devoid of life because it is blocked from receiving precipitation by the Andes Mountains to the east and the Chilean Coast Range to the west. The cold Humboldt Current and the anticyclone of the Pacific are essential to keep the dry climate of the Atacama. The average precipitation in the Chilean region of Antofagasta is just 1 millimeter, 0.039 in, per year. Some weather stations in the Atacama have never received rain. Evidence suggests that the Atacama may not have had any significant rainfall from 1570 to 1971. It is so arid that mountains that reach as high as 6,885 m, 22,589 feet, are completely free of glaciers and, in the southern part from 25 degrees S to 27 degrees S, may have been glacier-free throughout the Quaternary, though permafrost extends down to an altitude of 4,400 m, 14,400 feet, and is continuous above 5,600 m, 18,400 feet. Nevertheless, there is some plant life in the Atacama, in the form of specialist plants that obtain moisture from dew and the fogs that blow in from the Pacific. When rain falls in deserts, as it occasionally does, it is often with great violence. The desert surface is evidence of this, with dry stream channels known as arroyos or wadis meandering across its surface. These can experience flash floods, becoming raging torrents with surprising rapidity after a storm that may be many kilometers away. Most deserts are in basins with no drainage to the sea, but some are crossed by exotic rivers sourced in mountain ranges or other high rainfall areas beyond their borders. The River Nile, the Colorado River and the Yellow River do this, losing much of their water through evaporation as they pass through the desert and raising groundwater levels nearby. There may also be underground sources of water in deserts in the form of springs, aquifers, underground rivers or lakes. Where these lie close to the surface, wells can be dug and oases may form where plant and animal life can flourish. The Nubian Sandstone Aquifer system under the Sahara Desert is the largest known accumulation of fossil water. The Great Man-Made River is a scheme launched by Libya's Muammar Gaddafi to tap this aquifer and supply water to coastal cities. Kharga Oasis in Egypt is 150 kilometers, 93 mi, long and is the largest oasis in the Libyan desert. A lake occupied this depression in ancient times and thick deposits of sandy clay resulted. Wells are dug to extract water from the porous sandstone that lies underneath. Seepages may occur in the walls of canyons and pools may survive in deep shade near the dried-up watercourse below. Lakes may form in basins where there is sufficient precipitation or meltwater from glaciers above. They are usually shallow and saline, and wind blowing over their surface can cause stress, moving the water over nearby low-lying areas. When the lakes dry up, they leave a crust or hard pan behind. This area of deposited clay, silt or sand is known as a playa. The deserts of North America have more than 100 playas, many of them relics of Lake Bonneville, which covered parts of Utah, Nevada and Idaho during the last ice age when the climate was colder and wetter. These include the Great Salt Lake, Utah Lake, Sevier Lake and many dry lake beds. The smooth flat surfaces of playas have been used for attempted vehicle speed records at Black Rock Desert and Bonneville Speedway, and the United States Air Force uses Rogers Dry Lake in the Mojave Desert as runways for aircraft and the Space Shuttle. Classification. Deserts have been defined and classified in a number of ways, generally combining total precipitation, number of days on which this falls, temperature, and humidity, and sometimes additional factors. For example, Phoenix, Arizona, receives less than 250 millimeters, 9.8 in, of precipitation per year, and is immediately recognized as being located in a desert because of its aridity-adapted plants. The north slope of Alaska's Brooks Range also receives less than 250 millimeters, 9.8 in, of precipitation per year and is often classified as a cold desert. Other regions of the world have cold deserts, including areas of the Himalayas and other high-altitude areas in other parts of the world. Polar deserts cover much of the ice-free areas of the Arctic and Antarctic. A non-technical definition is that deserts are those parts of Earth's surface that have insufficient vegetation cover to support a human population. Potential evapotranspiration supplements the measurement of precipitation in providing a scientific measurement-based definition of a desert. The water budget of an area can be calculated using the formula P plus or minus S, wherein P is precipitation, P is potential evapotranspiration rates and S is the amount of surface storage of water. Evapotranspiration is the combination of water lost through atmospheric evaporation and through the life processes of plants. Potential evapotranspiration, then, is the amount of water that could evaporate in any given region. As an example, Tucson, Arizona receives about 300 millimeters, 12 in, of rain per year, however about 2,500 millimeters, 98 in, of water could evaporate over the course of a year. In other words, about 8 times more water could evaporate from the region than actually falls as rain. Rates of evapotranspiration in cold regions such as Alaska are much lower because of the lack of heat to aid in the evaporation process. Deserts are sometimes classified as hot or cold, semi-arid or coastal. The characteristics of hot deserts include high temperatures in summer, greater evaporation than precipitation, usually exacerbated by high temperatures, strong winds and lack of cloud cover, considerable variation in the occurrence of precipitation, its intensity and distribution, and low humidity. Winter temperatures vary considerably between different deserts and are often related to the location of the desert on the continental landmass and the latitude. Daily variations in temperature can be as great as 22 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or more, with heat loss by radiation at night being increased by the clear skies. Cold deserts, sometimes known as temperate deserts, occur at higher latitudes than hot deserts, and the aridity is caused by the dryness of the air. Some cold deserts are far from the ocean and others are separated by mountain ranges from the sea, and in both cases, there is insufficient moisture in the air to cause much precipitation. The largest of these deserts are found in Central Asia. Others occur on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains, the eastern side of the southern Andes and in southern Australia. Polar deserts are a particular class of cold desert. The air is very cold and carries little moisture, so little precipitation occurs, and what does fall, usually snow, is carried along in the often strong wind and may form blizzards, drifts and dunes similar to those caused by dust and sand in other desert regions. In Antarctica, for example, the annual precipitation is about 50 millimeters, 2 in, on the central plateau and some 10 times that amount on some major peninsulas. Based on precipitation alone, hyperarid deserts receive less than 25 millimeters, 1 in, of rainfall a year. They have no annual seasonal cycle of precipitation and experience 12-month periods with no rainfall at all. Arid deserts receive between 25 and 200 millimeters, 1 and 8 in a year, and semi-arid deserts between 200 and 500 millimeters, 8 and 20 in. However, such factors as the temperature, humidity, rate of evaporation and evapotranspiration, and the moisture storage capacity of the ground have a marked effect on the degree of aridity and the plant and animal life that can be sustained. Rain falling in the cold season may be more effective at promoting plant growth and defining the boundaries of deserts and the semi-arid regions that surround them on the grounds of precipitation alone is problematic. A semi-arid desert or a steppe is a version of the arid desert with much more rainfall, vegetation and higher humidity. These regions feature a semi-arid climate and are less extreme than regular deserts. Like arid deserts, temperatures can vary greatly in semi-deserts. They share some characteristics of a true desert and are usually located at the edge of deserts and continental dry areas. They usually receive precipitation from 250 to 500 millimeters, 9.8 to 19.7 in, but this can vary due to evapotranspiration and soil nutrition. Semi-deserts can be found in the Tavanus Desert, and some of the Spanish Plateau, the Sahel, the Eurasian Steppe, most of Central Asia, the western US, most of northern Mexico, portions of South America, especially in Argentina, and the Australian outback. They usually feature Beecher, hot steppe, or BSK, temperate steppe, in the Köppen climate classification. Coastal deserts are mostly found on the western edges of continental land masses in regions where cold currents approach the land or cold water upwellings rise from the ocean depths. The cool winds crossing this water pick up little moisture, and the coastal regions have low temperatures and very low rainfall, the main precipitation being in the form of fog and dew. The range of temperatures on a daily and annual scale is relatively low, being 11 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and 5 degrees Celsius, 9 degrees Fahrenheit, respectively in the Atacama Desert. Deserts of this type are often long and narrow and bounded to the east by mountain ranges. They occur in Namibia, Chile, Southern California and Baja California. Other coastal deserts influenced by cold currents are found in Western Australia, the Arabian Peninsula and Horn of Africa, and the western fringes of the Sahara. In 1961, Peveril Meigs divided desert regions on Earth into 3 categories according to the amount of precipitation they received. In this now widely accepted system, extremely arid lands have at least 12 consecutive months without precipitation. Arid lands have less than 250 millimeters, 9.8 in, of annual precipitation, and semi-arid lands have a mean annual precipitation of between 250 and 500 millimeters, 9.8 and 19.7 in. Both extremely arid and arid lands are considered to be deserts, while semi-arid lands are generally referred to as steppes when they are grasslands. The Agastya Malai Hills cut off Tirunelveli in India from the monsoons, creating a rain shadow region. Deserts are also classified, according to their geographical location and dominant weather pattern, as trade wind, mid-latitude, rain shadow, coastal, monsoon, or polar deserts. Trade wind deserts occur either side of the horse latitudes at 30 degrees to 35 degrees north and south. These belts are associated with the subtropical anticyclone and the large-scale descent of dry air moving from high altitudes toward the poles. The Sahara Desert is of this type. Mid-latitude deserts occur between 30 degrees and 50 degrees north and south. They are mostly in areas remote from the sea where most of the moisture has already precipitated from the prevailing winds. They include the Tenga and Sonoran deserts. Monsoon deserts are similar. They occur in regions where large temperature differences occur between sea and land. Moist warm air rises over the land, deposits its water content and circulates back to sea. Further inland, areas receive very little precipitation. The Thar Desert near the India/Pakistan border is of this type. In some parts of the world, deserts are created by a rain shadow effect. Orographic lift occurs as air masses rise to pass over high ground. In the process they cool and lose much of their moisture by precipitation on the windward slope of the mountain range. When they descend on the leeward side, they warm and their capacity to hold moisture increases, so an area with relatively little precipitation occurs. The Taklamakan Desert is an example, lying in the rain shadow of the Himalayas and receiving less than 38 mm, 1.5 in, precipitation annually. Other areas are arid by virtue of being a very long way from the nearest available sources of moisture. Montane deserts are arid places with a very high altitude. The most prominent example is found north of the Himalayas, in the Kunlun Mountains and the Tibetan Plateau. Many locations within this category have elevations exceeding 3,000 m, 9,800 feet, and the thermal regime can be hemiboreal. These places owe their profound aridity. The average annual precipitation is often less than 40 mm or 1.5 in, to being very far from the nearest available sources of moisture and are often in the lee of mountain ranges. Montane deserts are normally cold, or may be scorchingly hot by day and very cold by night, as is true of the northeastern slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro. Polar deserts such as McMurdo dry valleys remain ice-free because of the dry katabatic winds that flow downhill from the surrounding mountains. Former desert areas presently in non-arid environments, such as the Sand Hills in Nebraska, are known as paleodeserts. In the Köppen climate classification system, deserts are classed as BWH, hot desert, or BWK, temperate desert. In the Thornthwaite climate classification system, deserts would be classified as arid megathermal climates. Polar desert. Polar deserts are a type of cold desert. While they do not lack water, having a persistent cover of snow and ice, this is merely due to marginal evaporation rates and low precipitation. The McMurdo dry valleys of Antarctica, which lack water, whether rain, ice, or snow, much like a non-polar desert, and even have such desert features as hypersaline lakes and intermittent streams that resemble, except for being frozen at their surfaces, hot or cold deserts for extreme aridity and lack of precipitation of any kind. Extreme winds and not seasonal heat desiccate these nearly lifeless terrains. Biological desert. The concept of biological desert redefines the concept of desert, without the characteristic of aridity, not lacking water, but instead lacking life. Such places can be so-called ocean deserts, which are mostly at the centers of gyres, but also hypoxic or anoxic waters such as dead zones. Morphology. Weathering processes. Main article, weathering. Deserts usually have a large diurnal and seasonal temperature range, with high daytime temperatures falling sharply at night. The diurnal range may be as much as 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, 36 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and the rock surface experiences even greater temperature differentials. During the day the sky is usually clear and most of the sun's radiation reaches the ground, but as soon as the sun sets, the desert cools quickly by radiating heat into space. In hot deserts, the temperature during daytime can exceed 45 degrees Celsius, 113 degrees Fahrenheit, in summer and plunge below freezing point at night during winter. 1 square centimeter, 0.16 square in, of wind